doesn't seem to compute to me.
Right.
Faye's not here, right? I think she would vehemently disagree. And it's when we talk about, when I was asking you, we were working on grounding out there and using the practice, the 5-element Dao Yin practice to focus on that core to floor alignment, that structural integrity. And what I'm inviting you to do is notice the things that are uprooting, right? This is our foundational work for this whole month. Let's take it into the 5-element practice that we've been working on, right? So kidneys, yin energy, deeply conservationist. We're looking to store, to cultivate, basically recharge the batteries. Let's just put it that way. We're looking to recharge our postnatal chi. And with that, things that are uprooting will disrupt our ability to maintain that charge, that reserve. Think of them like short circuits. If you think about I'm starting off with it today.
Might as well.
Might as well. It's going to come up here sooner or later, so you guys probably dream about this, don't you? In this alignment, when the mind is quiet, the emotions are settled, the body is relaxed, we are in charge mode. We're not depleting. Does that make sense? Even if we're out doing stuff, we're in charge mode if we're operating from that place of peace and quiet and center. We're not depleting. It's when we start to do things that become uprooting, that loosen this grounded energy, that we start to deplete from the stores that are here. So my electrical engineering mind will go to this, we're looking at a circuit, so there's the charge is coming in here, and the charge flows through because I'm well grounded. If I'm not grounded, then this charge is not going to flow through, which means I'm going to be depleting one of these reserves.
Or all of them?
Or all of them. Usually it's not one, it's usually a blend. But so example, mental uprooting, anxiety. My mind is racing, charging. Well, I'm not grounded. I'm up here dancing around. There's a lot of short circuit going on. That's exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But maybe I can keep my mind quiet, but I'm really annoyed and frustrated. Cheryl wouldn't understand that this week at all, based on our conversations. She spent the week pretty much frustrated and pissed off.
Yeah. And in pain. And emotional.
And in pain and emotional. And yeah, and there's a lot that goes behind that just because of the chronic pain that you've been dealing with. But how energized did you feel during that time?
Not at all.
Not at all. Right? So that's my point making, right? And just even taking the emotions out of it, the physical pain is draining. It's exhausting. When you're in chronic pain, it is varying levels of fatigue that show up. Fair?
Definitely.
So I want you to, when you think about grounding and when you think about it from this 5-element practice, what we're trying to do in here is learn how to balance and cultivate, but in a practical way, not in a practical way. And so the more quiet my mind is, or can be, the more settled my emotions are, and the more relaxed my body is, the better my grounding practice is. The better my grounding can be. This is where I can function at optimum potential. For me.
And the better the grounding, the more quiet, settled, and relaxed.
It all interplays.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that comes up, and this is something one of my clients told me this week, or actually during the grounding workshop, the more in alignment he is, the more in this space he is, the more inspiration he's getting for his business, right? And that inspiration is what I've talked about. When we're in this place, we become inspired, and so inspired in spirit. We have access to that power greater than ourselves. Whatever you want to call it, divine, whatever. Yes? Yes, sir.
The challenge in trying to understand this model is going through the different movement patterns. I'm mentally ungrounded. I don't have a sense. I'm acquiring it, and I'm fine with the process of getting there.
Yes.
The minute I'm trying to follow and I don't know what hand is up and things get tangled in my brain, I'm emotionally so surprisingly cool with that.
That's good.
Yeah. My
Not your nature before, was it?
No. If something was off,
I see you as kind of competitive.
yeah. Yeah. Tremendously. And you know, the biggest with self, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So emotionally, I am saying, yeah, it's gonna take time. I'll get a light bulb. Here's where I'm going, is that when you give one focal point, I really can deepen grounding when you say one thing.
Mm-hmm.
With every exhalation, allow your feet to sink deeper into the floor.
Right.
So when I do that, after about 10 breaths, I'm very settled and grounded.
Yes.
Because I can connect the activity and the grounding together. When I'm moving in mental turning,
There's a lot of
coming up,
moving parts.
when the parts don't connect, and it's a beautiful example of the model, the grounding gets lessened.
Yes.
When my mind is confused, it's more difficult to sense the grounding because the focus is elsewhere.
Yes. Yes. I've always said, or relatively recently said, I love speaking in absolutes. I never speak in absolutes. Something I've said frequently is, I'm not impressed by the monks who spend a life in a cave being fed grains of rice to achieve enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to come out here and have a mortgage and have, you know, a wife and 3 kids and a 300-pound pig to deal with. And if they can achieve some measure of tranquility and all of that, then yeah, hats off. Now you've done your work. You've exercised the muscle, if you will.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not challenged by your environment, how are you going to get stronger?
Yeah.
Right? And so if you think about, let's explore that a bit, and I'd like you to, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical, and it doesn't have to be about you. It can be just about your perception of the world. So I don't want to make this personal, I just want to make it a list. And what I'd like to do is have a list that of things that you guys consider uprooting. Things that uproot you, and that are not you, but things that are uprooting. Mental, emotional, or physical.
Pain.
Pain. So let's just go with,
Sorry.
let's just
personal.
go with, let's go with physical pain. Okay?
No sleep. Sleeplessness.
Insomnia?
Insomnia, that's fair.
Okay.
Criticism.
Criticism. Okay. Did I spell that right?
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Teach. More?
Hunger?
What kind of, as she nods on the bag.
Hunger.
What kind of hunger? Physical hunger?
Physical hunger, yeah.
Physical hunger.
Okay, that's a good point.
unknown.
Let's just go with fear. And then Anne, you said emotional hunger, so help me understand. I would understand, I mean, I accept that, but help me understand. Hers is easy, she's chewing on a bag over there, but.
Look on his face is great.
Learning to open and have your heart available and wanting it and.
So, is it, I'll put this up here, we're gonna discuss it because I think that there's some depth to this. Emotional
Is it desire?
hunger.
Do you want it? Yeah.
It can be desire, it can be, different ways, yeah. Jane, any perspectives? Uprooting. And again, it doesn't have to be personal, it's just thoughts.
Frustration is uprooting.
Frustration?
Isolation.
I'll put it up there, we'll explore.
Illness
Being hot or
with
cold.
people you love.
What?
Illness with people you love. I mean, situation, illnesses, like somebody you
Oh,
love is sick, people around you that are,
Okay, yeah, so,
or whatever the emotion is
I'll
related to
put,
that.
how about I put health?
Okay.
Whether it's self or other, it can be uprooting, right? If there's a health issue inside ourselves or someone near us or somebody we're connected to, that can be very uprooting, yes. Dave, anything?
Intellectual problems.
Problems with a math teacher? I mean, I'm not.
Anything where you have to use your head to figure something out. You can
So, cognition?
you can get too out of your body.
Is that part of
How about if I put mental? I'll just put mental and we'll explore. Okay?
We are always mentioning awfulizing, but then that includes a lot of those things. So,
Well,
Isn't
I'll
that
put it
true?
into mental, I'll put awful,
yes,
awfulizing.
yeah.
Noise.
Noise?
Can be.
Excessive noise.
Excessive or repetitive or sharp.
Sharp.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways noise can come into play.
Smell.
odors?
Yeah.
Any of our five senses can be disrupted that way. Texture, that kind of thing.
Very much so.
Yeah, so let's just put senses instead.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna put sixth sense. Six senses.
Okay, fine.
It's really interesting that the senses can either ground you or uproot you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you noticed that. It kind of reminds me of this. I don't know.
Yes.
Now just
Exactly.
There we go.
Yeah.
See, you feel so much better.
So somebody brought to my attention this week that expectations can be uprooting. In fact, I'm
Yes.
beginning to believe that's a core uproot system in life.
yeah,
Mine anyway.
expectations.
Yep.
Right. Janet, anything?
Can't think of it.
Oh, silent one. Okay, that's a pretty good list. And based on this, they're all right and they're all wrong. Okay. So, physical pain, and I'm going to put insomnia in that category as well. Hunger, okay.
Health.
We'll put emotion, the senses here, particularly in this connection as well, if the senses are uncomfortable, okay? Health would go into that category as well. So we're looking at physical manifestations of discomfort or disruption or uprooting, okay? Now let's look at it from this model. We've got this physical uprooting here. What does that do to our emotions? What kind of things manifest if let's look at physical pain, and I have this unidentified pain, or it's coming in, it's intense, and I'm not sure why it happened or where it happened, but it's really bugging me. It's really giving me a run for my money. What happens emotionally in that space of uncertainty, insecurity, vulnerability?
It goes back to your electrical comment. If you're not grounded, one of those gets shocked.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yes, but I want to work with you, work through this, because understanding gives us the opportunity to observe and make different choices. Without that understanding, we're just going to run in the same patterns, right? So when we're looking at wanting to be grounded, wanting to stay in that spleen, earth energy, rooted in the kidneys, feeling that space of trust, working on nurturing wisdom, what are we looking at here? We've got the physical disruption in the body. I want to kind of look at emotional, how is that manifesting emotionally? Irritability. So there's an impatience and irritability.
A bit of fear, because you don't know what's causing it.
Fear.
Yep. Frustration.
Yeah. So emotionally, we've got fear. Okay. Mentally, I heard frustration, irritation. What'd you say, Alice? I forgot.
Fear was.
Fear is yours, okay. There was more. What was there? So emotionally we have fear. The mental constructs come in and start awfulizing. Start creating that worry, then that feeds the anxiety. Now, anxiety shows up as a chaotic energy in the heart center, right? The heart likes order and tranquility, peace. The chaos is fed through that. So if you look at it from the 5 element, I've got a physical thing that I'm not able to identify readily, or I can't seem to get rid of it. I start to lose trust, I start to get uprooted, because this is where we start to get uprooted, in the spleen, trust energy, earth energy. So as that uproots, my fear grows. And as this grows, my excitement grows, my heart energy starts to get disrupted. So it feeds anxiety, and then that starts to push into a lack of boundaries. I don't trust myself anymore. I don't trust my body. I mean, I work with people that feel like their body is completely against them. And it's like, no, it's just talking to you. You may not like what it has to say. There's times when I don't like what my body's telling me. But it's simply having a conversation. It's not...
It's a loud one, though.
It's a loud conversation. Hey, I don't...
It's a loud conversation.
3 years ago, possibly what you're dealing with knocked me out cold, because I was not doing this. I had lost my shit big time. I was really angry. And I got to that tunnel, and I kept pushing, and my body said, oh really? Try this. And went boom, I was gone. Just a shot of pain. Yeah, Richard.
Do you see them, the 3 concept areas, do you see that they're in a continual state of interconnection, and that one impacts all, and if one begins to ground itself, the grounding impact starts to permeate all? You see them as a constant state of flowing and connecting and affecting each other.
Does anybody want to answer that?
Yes or no, it depends.
This one's one's not, it depends. This one is yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
you're not
Because-
grounding one of them though, you're grounding overall, but you're using a technique to ground whatever's shocked, right? That's why I said,
Well, so we're exploring physical pain, okay? So I have physical pain, I have gone into a fear of, I don't know how bad this is, I don't know if I can do my job anymore,
Mhm.
you know, what's going on? I mean, for me, I use my body to work. If I'm to the point where I'm laid out in bed, that's scary. And
Yes.
it can get scary because it's like, I don't work, I don't get paid, so it can go downhill in a hurry.
Yeah.
Right? So with that, the fear can come in and start really uprooting. Then my mind goes into awfulizing about the, you know, the bills and, you know, my own virility, my own ability to be the person I've always been. You know, my mortality, my whatever. All of that starts to come into play. So the physical pain has pushed the emotions into a place of unsettle, and then the mind is carrying it further,
Right.
right? Here's the thing, when we're just exploring physical pain, if my physical pain is, let's say, at a 7, an intense injury, right? I'm at a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. If my emotions are disrupted, they're gonna add, you know, a couple of points easy. A physical tension in the body. Does that make sense? Mental, same thing. You know, all of a sudden, I'm at an 11 here. So I can't do math and count to 10. But my intensity, the way I perceive the physical pain now is much higher because of the emotional and mental strain that is accompanying it.
Mhm.
Fair?
Yeah.
And there's a genuine
Yes.
physical injury here. There's something that is physically a problem. Pulled muscle, ligament, tendon, dislocation, tear, separation,
So
whatever you wanna
have
go.
to address that first.
Well, I need to nurture this, yes, but if my emotions and my mind are not on board,
Uh-uh.
there's going to be a battle. This is what I was describing earlier.
Mhm.
My pain levels was elevating, and I had a lot to do and I couldn't be inconvenienced. And some of you have heard this story. I had a lot to do and I couldn't be inconvenienced. I was supposed to go out of town the next day. I had a lot to get ready, and I was gonna be leaving to go to California to help proctor final exams for the Medical Qigong College. I couldn't be bothered with this. This was just in my way. I got more and more irritated, more and more angry, and since anger is my go-to, I went tunnel vision. And Fane is following me, saying, please stop, slow down. You can't do this, stop, you need to stop. That was gone. That was like, that's like Charlie Brown's mom. Until I couldn't lift my leg to get into the damn car. I'm sitting there holding the car, and I cannot get my leg to come up. So I shuffle back in the house. I get myself upstairs. And I pushed a little harder, and my body hit a nerve that knocked me unconscious. Literally. I woke up staring at the ceiling, Fane looking at me. I'm in a sweat. She said, what happened? Because she heard a crash downstairs. I said, I had no idea. So in that moment, my mind was gone. I was so uprooted I couldn't see straight. My emotions were in a rage because my body was against me. I'd gone to victim big time. Right? And that battle, I promise you, if you take on this battle with your body, it's gonna win. I promise you, I've learned. The most horrible thing for me personally about that experience is that was a Monday morning. That Saturday I had taught a half-day pain management workshop to a group of veterans.
oops.
Yeah. So that practice what you preach hammer came down on me really, really hard. And I spent close to, I think, 13 days meditating on that. Couldn't do much else. Working on it. Understanding it more deeply, because that was a humbling time. So, in that, I needed to focus on rest. physical rest. In that gave me an opportunity to get into my mental and emotional unsettle, the disruption. And so I had to work on, and I did, the expectations, the fear, the worry, all of that. Instead of hiding from it, I leaned into it. I created a space where I could say, okay, I'm looking at, in that scenario, I'm here, there's a timeline forward of very significant uncertainty for me. Because if this required surgery, I was going to be out for a while. And so worst case scenario, I'm dealing with surgery or I'm incapacitated to a significant extent and our reserves are running dry. What do I do? Where do I go? How do I deal with this? Best case scenario, I could get right up and go back to what I was doing. Neither of those happened. Right? It was somewhere in the middle. So it took me about 6 months to get back up to using my Qigong practice, about 6 months to get back into where my back is stable and I'm not constantly worried about it. I am aware of it. It's always there, but I'm not worried about it. If I go to pick something up, I pay attention to what I'm doing, but I'm not worried about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that integration process helped, because the pain was there. So as soon as I got my mind quiet and my mind to quiet and my emotions to settle about it, I was only dealing with the physical pain. And at that point in time, then I'm doing, what I coached you on this week was, as you're laying in bed, do Qigong, micro movements, deep breathing, get the circulation into the area, identify the angles and the muscles that are really pissed, which nerve is, you can have that information if you ask for it.
I think something you said that was pivotal for me was the first part of the overview where you went out, collapsed.
Yeah.
The sense that I was relating it is fighting the fear and just not stopping until the breakdown.
Yeah.
And the second thing, when you're on your back, leaning into the experience. So the ability to lean into and take in is the beginning of integration. The running away from or killing the experience, to rage, whatever it is, to
Right.
beat it up or run from it,
Right.
is the disintegration.
Yeah. And to me, that starts with a simple word that's very hard to manage.
Exactly.
Acceptance. I need to be present to the circumstances that I'm in and accept them for where they are, even if I don't like them. Because if I don't accept that this is my circumstance at this moment in time, then I can't move forward. Right? If I'm in my car and I'm lost, and I don't accept the fact that I'm lost, I'm going to continue to be lost. How many husbands are you familiar with it? I don't need a map. But we're going the wrong way, honey.
I don't care.
So
It just keep on going.
we keep on going, yeah.
That's right, he would.
Kentucky, what are we doing in Kentucky?
I heard a neat explanation of AWARE, the acronym AWARE.
Aware.
To accept, to witness, to acknowledge, to root, to embrace.
Interesting, yeah. I would put acknowledge before acceptance.
But the context that I heard was, first was to let in, accept. Then I'm aware of what I'm recognizing by acknowledging. But if I don't let it in, allowing it to come in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I look at acknowledgement as Like I acknowledge you're here in the room.
Yeah.
And now I accept your contributions versus I accept that you're in the room and I acknowledge your contributions.
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of semantics.
Yeah.
But
You're both taking in and connecting.
yeah, I like that. So, anything else on the physical uprooting?
My Thursday was like that.
Your Thursday was like that?
Yeah, yesterday. Because as soon as I decided to cancel the chiropractor appointment, then that calmed my mind more because I didn't have to fear the pain of going.
Right.
And I found that the emotions were settled, and physically I started feeling better. I actually had a better evening.
Yeah. Well, you and I were texting and I was checking on you and I kept saying, slow down. I don't want to pull the text out. I don't remember exactly
Chris
how
was
I
writing in
put it.
caps at the yesterday morning. You wrote rest, all in caps.
Yeah,
I was like,
rest.
okay, I got
Stop
you.
trying to
I got the
fix
point.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Richard. But no, that's key to it. But let's look at, so we've touched on the physical and everything, and I think everybody's got some clarity on that. But let's go to mental uprooting. Nothing wrong with the body, right? Let's go to mental uprooting, because that was something, so expectations fall into that, right? Awfulizing. Cheryl knows nothing about that. Frustration. The sense of isolation. I wish Richard was still here. Sad that one was his. But anything else mental you want to add to that list?
Would criticism go on?
Oh, yes, thank
that
you.
list too?
Sorry, I missed it. Criticism. Now, yes, your mind is going to observe all of these. It's going to observe itself in the awfulizing and all of that. It's going to observe the emotions. It's going to observe the physical being. But if there's nothing going on physically, and there's not anything really going on mentally, we can still create a chaotic storm up here all by ourselves. One of the gifts of being human. We love to torment ourselves. So we second guess, we question ourselves, we doubt ourselves.
Would
It's
judgment go there?
Not mine.
It's me.
Would judgment go there?
Yeah, so let's put some of these, before I lose my train of thought here, let's put some of these up on the board.
Doubt.
So, question, doubt, what else did I say?
Judgment.
Judgment. What else? Second guess. I guess that would be question. What else? Dave, anything?
Confusion.
Confusion, okay. Okay. Anything else? So when we get into this place, one of my favorite statements for doubt is, if you're going to doubt something, doubt your limits. Doubt your limits.
Make a good bumper sticker.
Probably. But let's explore just for a moment how the mental starts to feed into these other levels. Right? So let's look at frustration. In order for frustration to manifest itself, what has to happen?
Failed expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be external or internal.
That's right.
If I expect something other, like, you know, I've worked with people with young children who are really stressed and frustrated by their young children. And when they describe the circumstances to me, they're expecting their 4 or 5-year-old to behave like they're 10 or 12. So the delta between what they actually can do and what's being expected of them is significant. There's just the framework, the mental framework for the parent is creating unnecessary stress in both, right? It's not that you let the kid off the hook, but when you're making a 5-year-old clean his room before he goes to school and hospital corners on the sides of the bed, I'm not kidding, tad extreme and a tad significant for that child. It's an intense way to grow up, right? Even one of my own sons, you know, we're a scouting family. Now the expectations can go both ways. It can be a misinterpretation of a well-intended expectation. It wasn't even an expectation. In Scouts, we're a scouting family. Do your best is a motto. Do your best. Not do perfect, just do your best. So something I would say to my boys is your best is always good enough for me. Right? If you come home from school and you have a D and you tell me you did your best, perfectly fine. Let's work on, you know, maybe improving, maybe some tutoring or something else that can help you strengthen that area, but there's nothing wrong with that. One of my sons interpreted that as I can never give enough. My best is, he questioned his best as being enough to the point of pain. I didn't know this till much later, but it was really hard for me because it was completely tangential to what my intention was. But his interpretation of that intention was through his own filters, right? So the expectations, external or internal, can be brutal if they're ungrounded. And if I'm expecting something of somebody else that is not realistic, or even if it is realistic and they fail, that frustration is going to come up and it's going to uproot me. But more often than not, the delta between our expectations and reality is our own making. We create our own frustration by looking at things in a way that is unrealistic to the people around us. If we're driving down the road and we're expecting everybody to drive as perfectly as I do, that's unrealistic. First of all, it's unrealistic to think that I'm a perfect driver, and then it's unrealistic to think that everybody else went to school of driving that I did, which I didn't. Well, I drove on the farm when I was like 11, 12, but learned how to avoid cows. That helped me later in traffic. But if I have that expectation that this person should know better, or should act better, or be different, external expectation here, what proof do I have? Am I projecting my own knowledge, experience, and training on that person? Because that's a frustration waiting to happen. That's pretty much every interaction you're going to be frustrated with. I saw this a fair amount in law enforcement, where these officers are trained to know the law and they're trained to have certain skills, and then when they don't see that in the person they're working with or trying to manage, it gets really frustrating really fast. Why don't you understand this? One of the most powerful awarenesses I had working with law enforcement officers for them was giving them the understanding of the neuroscience behind black and white thinking, where it's either right or wrong. When you get into that high stress situation that's very black and white, you're either with me or against me. Well, anytime an officer comes up on you and wants to talk to you, if they're on duty, you know, and they pull up on scene and they're taking charge of a scene, even if you're the victim, you're already in a heightened stress. You're already in that black and white mode. So if I tell you to sit down on the curb and you don't do it, now all of a sudden I'm irritated. Right? I've told you to sit down twice. Now sit down. And then all of a sudden that's escalating. And now they're getting more scared. They can't think straight. They're afraid you're going to get beat. And, then it goes sideways. Just giving them that understanding that they're, I had an officer come back to me and tell me a story about a teenager he was working with. And he saw what I had been describing in class. He saw the fear. He saw that the kid wanted to answer his questions but was terrified. And he said, hey guy, why don't you just, let's sit down on the curb here, take a couple of breaths, and we'll talk about it. That's all the kid needed. As soon as he had a couple of breaths in him, he was able to settle enough, open up enough to be able to talk to him. And that cop shared that story with us in class, and it was really powerful. I heard a lot more other stories, but that was a really powerful awareness to be able to pull back and say, wait a minute. I need to get out of this spiral, right? Even a little bit of grounding, a little tether, a breath or two can start to bring that grounding into effect to start to dial the mind down enough to give me a little clarity. Right? So if you find yourself getting frustrated, the question becomes, what am I expecting? Take a breath or two and say, what am I expecting here? Like in your situation with your pain this week, what were you expecting? You mentioned a lot of different frustrations. Can you verbalize a particular expectation you had that wasn't being met?
Wait a minute, say that again? I lost you for a second.
You were frustrated this week, yes?
Right, yes, oh, definitely.
What expectation did you have in play?
Work, basically trying to be able to teach, or even just going to oversee teaching.
So you were...
It's difficult, because if I didn't go, I don't get paid. And so that creates that whole mindset of fear, and then there was, like I said, outside expectations. It's like I had new students. What did they expect the class to be like? Because now it's not going to be like it normally is.
Right.
Because I had helpers teaching in that class. So there was a whole bunch of that going on, frustrations, and then, I was the worst housekeeper this week. I couldn't
pick anything up.
couldn't pick anything up, couldn't get over,
Yeah. So your body was having trouble. It was struggling this week. For whatever reason, it was struggling.
Yeah.
And your expectation was, I have things, I know this
I have
one
things I
really
have
well.
to do.
I have things I have to do.
Yep.
I have people depending on me. I
It's all
depend on
piling up.
myself. And it's piling up. And that's expecting something that's not going to happen. Right? And it creates this turmoil, that mental and emotional strain that adds to the physical impact on the body. And like you said, as soon as you started letting that go, the pain levels started dropping. It doesn't mean the injury's gone, but it certainly makes it more palpable, right? Tolerable, I should say. Make sense? So, confusion can come from varying sources. There was confusion in what you were going through because you'd gotten into that tizzy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But when confusion can come in, when the stress levels are high enough, and again, going back to that black and white thinking, that primal survival mode, there is no reasoning there. There's no reasoning. If my mind has the ability, the cognitive ability to go through this bandwidth of thinking. If I go to tunnel vision, I'm here. And none of this is available to me. And that's where we start to get confused, disoriented. We can't make heads or tails of something. Do you have different example or awareness, David, or is it along the lines of what you were thinking, or is there something else?
I was thinking a lot of situations in life, there's no clear-cut answer, especially before the fact. There might be some ideal answer in retrospect, but before the fact, there's no clarity as to, is this better, is that better? this has a drawback, that has a drawback, you know,
Right.
a third option has a drawback, so you gotta make your best choice, but there's a certain amount of confusion that you go through and trying to sort out.
Yeah, and that can come into trust, big time. Right? From a grounding perspective, if I have all these, these potential decisions I can weigh, and I'm able to look at them, I can see, this is worst case, this is best case, and I can see the pitfalls and everything between, but I have trouble making a decision.
Mhm.
Is that where you're going? Then that becomes a trust issue. Because I'm not grounded in myself to a point where I can trust that there's always, nothing is black and white. Everything is in the gray. So being able to say, okay, at this moment in time, this is my best choice.
That's important because
Yeah.
what he's leading to, and what we all run into, when all those choices look rather bleak, that really is the tunnel vision, because you don't see any light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
So you have to be careful to, I think, to always move toward an answer. It may not be the best one, but
Well, it could be the best answer for this moment in time.
Yes.
So, an example would be like, let's say the front door is 10 years down the road. Okay, I'm looking at a timeline here. I'm in now, and I'm making a decision, right? Well, from here, from this vantage point, I can see the computer in the front office, but I can't see the front door. So if I'm stuck because I can't see that far, right, what's going to happen in 2 years, in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? Am I still going to have this center? Am I going to be world famous? Am I going to live in a dumpster? I don't have that information. But I have enough information to make this decision here. So I make this decision. I'm going to step this way. Oh, I can see a little more. So now I have a little bit more information that I can make the next decision with. So I'm trusting, even if I look back and say, well, now that I'm here, I can see that there's something in my way over there, so I may have to go that way first. I didn't have that information back then. So if I beat myself up for that, then that's going to add fear to the next decision. Does that make sense?
And many decisions are reversible. You can,
Most decisions are, yeah. Suicide's not, but most decisions are. And you get into, sorry, I didn't mean to throw that shock into the system, but that's the ultimate, bad decision. But if I may say, I think going straight's not going to be my best bet here. I'm going to go over here, and it's like, oh well, I can't see as far now. But what's over there? Wow, look at that. Well, now I've got more information, and I've got a different decision to make. Well, this actually gave me, okay, I'm going to go over here. Ooh, there's a heavy bag in there. Fun. You see what I mean? If I look back and say, well, when I made that decision over there, I could see that over there. Now, I don't want to go there anymore. I want to go over there. So, I didn't have that information over there. So if I'm beating myself up for something I did back there, that's not fair. And it impedes my ability to feel good about where I am. Or any decision moving forward. Does that make sense?
Yes.
yeah, because then you're spending all your time on blame, either on somebody else, something else, or
Blame,
yourself,
frustration,
or guilt
Well,
for not
blame,
doing it that
guilt,
way.
shame, right? Woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time shoulding all over ourselves. Shoulding. I said shoulding.
Yes.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Marsha looked at me judgmentally.
A little sorry.
This is a deep, deep subject. Good topic of exploration.
Well, in a kidding manner, last night, one of my students said, "Can I use your restroom?" I said, sure, go ahead. And I said, it's not like I could stop you. You know, and he's like, out of respect, I don't know what I ask. But yeah, but I mean, I basically knew that it's like, go, because I can't do anything.
One of my favorite lyricists, musical lyricists, was Neil Peart, Rush. And one of the songs that I like is a song called Free Will. If you haven't heard that song, go look up the lyrics. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. There's a whole lot in that Free Will song that's just beautifully written. He's a really talented lyricist. Very philosophical, very studious, but all of his songs just seem to have this beautiful life perspective in it. But that sticks with me. If I choose not to decide, I still have made a choice. And so if I choose to stay stagnant, that's a choice. If I choose to go over here, and it's like, ooh, that was a bad idea, well, now I have more information to make the next decision. If I allow myself to integrate that decision and say, yeah, not my best day. So I'm going to take that information with me, and I'm going to make that inform my next decision. Right? Or I can stay here, get stagnant, become fearful because that was a bad decision. And I did it 10 years ago, but you know, it was a bad decision, and I can't trust myself to make a good decision. When Fane and I were you know, in a position to where we were looking at this space, that's a huge commitment. We looked at each other and said, if not now, when? Not getting any younger. And so if not now, when? Because this has been a dream of ours for 25 years. So if not now, when? And I can document that. I've got documents at home where I was working negotiations with shopping centers back then with a partner. Couldn't get the partner to pull the trigger. I needed him to be able to do it. So if not now, when? This decision may end up being a money pit. I'm talking 2 years ago when we were making this decision. It could easily have been a money pit that didn't do anything. That was definitely one of the choices here. Where I jump into this and it's an utter failure, and we've lost a lot of money, and we're still trying to feed our family. That was on the table. Best case, the place is full, the vision is complete, there's a beautiful community, and people nurture each other and take care of each other. We all sing Kumbaya around the fire, right? So somewhere in between is the truth. And I had to find the trust inside myself. Fane had to find the trust inside herself. And we had to find the trust within our relationship to be, because I can't do this myself. She can't do it herself. We're doing it as a team. If it wasn't for that, this wouldn't be here. But I've made decisions here that weren't the best. Hashtag the store. You know, why don't we have a store? We can sell stuff to our members and we'll get them at a discount, you know, bulk buying and everything. Flop. Right. Okay, we'll do something else with it. Guest lounge. That may fall on its face in 6 months. I don't know. But right now, it's what feels good. Right? It may end up being a friggin' zoo. I don't know. Put the snakes in there and then make the pig come up here. It's like, I want a piece of quiet at home. We'll just take everything up to the center. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. All I know is that, like that decision there, that decision that, you know, I kept going by the store and knowing there was a lot to do in there, and knowing I didn't have the bandwidth to do it, knowing that, you know, Fane is doing her training and my son is in school, so I knew nobody in my family that was available had the bandwidth to do it. Can't afford to pay somebody for that. Done. Stagnant. It's stagnant. Don't like stagnant. Need to clear the stagnation. liquidation sale, let's move it out, let's do something else, right? By the way, we've still got a few yoga mats and things. So, I think we might chew on this a little more next week, but questions?
That's very good.
Yeah, you guys are amazing. You know, the feedback, the questions, the challenges you bring into the classroom, I'm deeply grateful for. So, thank you
And
for
almost always, well, always, it has something, I think, for each of us in what's happened through the week, even if we're not expressing it.
Yeah.
Because life happens, and we're all active and doing things, so it, yeah.
Two things I know about life. We're all doing it together, and none of us get out of it alive. So,
Yeah.
you know, let's just have fun along the way.
Mhm.
Thank you for your time and attention, guys.
Thank
Have a great
you.
week.